National Task Force on Workforce Development for People with Disabilities. And we're glad that you're here. We're going to be talking about the subcommittee on career readiness and employability today. And with that, I am Jacqueline Sly, representative from South Dakota, and I co-chaired that subcommittee with Craig Hall, and he is from Massachusetts and works with the Developmental Disabilities Council. We had about 12 committee members on that subcommittee, and they all worked together. They were some from working within the field of disabilities and from all different departments. We had legislators, we had from different departments, and also we had people that were actually working in the field too that joined us. So they added a lot of richness to our committee. So today we're going to be talking about some of those findings that we had and develop kind of the roadmap that we're going to go on. So Mindy Larsen, she's with the Institute for Educational Leadership Center for Workforce Development. That's on the next slide that we have. And she is going to be talking to you for just a little bit. Let's go to the next slide. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention we have to switch slides. Next slide.
All right.
Mindy.
All right. I hope everyone can hear me okay, and I apologize in advance. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty with my phone connection today. My name's Mindy Larsen, and I work for the Institute for Educational Leadership, a national nonprofit that houses the National Technical Assistance Center called the National Collaborative on Workforce and Disability for Youth. And we're supported by the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy. And our mission is to ensure transition-age youth are provided full access to high-quality services in integrated settings to gain education, employment, and independent living. And we do this by assisting state and local workforce development systems to integrate youth with disabilities and other disconnected youth into their service strategies. Next slide, please. I'm not sure if anyone's able to advance the slide for me. Great, thank you. So we've been working for a while now on career readiness and employability for all young people, including youth with disabilities. And I thought it would be important to start with a common definition. And so often we don't actually have common language to make sure that everyone is really focused on the same goal. So I have here is the definition from a National Career Readiness Partners Council, a collaborative of many organizations that work in education and workforce development and as well as employers. And really, the career-ready person is someone who can effectively navigate pathways that connect education and employment to achieve a fulfilling, financially secure, and successful career. This is what we really want for all young people, including young people with disabilities. And of course, this involves helping them develop a whole range of skills that they need to be prepared to succeed in the workforce. So another important definition that we focus our work around is career literacy. What does it mean to help today's students develop their career literacy? And what we're talking about is the knowledge, skills, and support necessary to make an informed decision about a career, and also the best pathway to pursue that career. But while we are working and focusing a lot of our energy around developing every young person's employability skills, we also need to be helping them develop their understanding of career options and pathways to achieving career goals so that they can make an informed decision about their education and their the employment opportunities that they are going to pursue to lead not just to a job, but to an ongoing career pathway. One of the things that we focus a lot of our time on is looking at how we engage young people in a career development process that enables them to develop the competencies they need in terms of their self-exploration, career exploration, and career planning and management. Next slide, please. I'm going to explain a little bit more about these 3 career development areas. We want to be sure that all students have opportunities that are high-quality experiences in development. And what that means is making sure that they have work-based learning opportunities and developmentally appropriate skill-building activities that focus on developing their skills in 3 skill domains. And so self-exploration is really the ability to understand yourself, your personal interests, skills, and values so that you can better understand the quality, your own qualities, your own personalities, and your own interests before you make a decision about your direction. Career exploration is the ability to identify and analyze the various career options in terms of what education you would need to pursue a career, what training you can get to pursue it, what experiences, particularly different work experiences you'll need to pursue different career options, and also what competencies and soft skills are required for success. And then finally, career planning and management is a skill area that's made up of the whole range of skills needed to maintain employability and navigate career changes. Because as we know, today's workforce is ever-changing and the economy is ever-changing. Individuals are having up to 15 different jobs in their lifetime. So we need to be prepared and to adapt and navigate different changes throughout our lives. So we want to develop that ability to navigate throughout their life and make sure they're equipped with soft skills, career or occupation-specific skills, job search skills, financial literacy, as well as a whole range of other youth development and leadership competencies that will set them on a path to success. Next slide, please. So when we think about how we engage young people in career development to increase their career readiness, we looked around. We're taking a look at what are some of the common strategies across the country, and we found a trend, actually a really widespread trend, that many states are using individualized learning to develop career readiness as well as college readiness. And these plans from state to state vary in terms of what they're called and somewhat in how they are structured. But at this point, there are 42 states and the District of Columbia that are requiring or encouraging individualized learning plans for all students. Some of the examples of names include Student Success Plan, Individual Career and Academic Plan, Individual Graduation Plan. So when I talk about an ILP, I'm using that term to refer to what may go by a different name in your state or in your schools to describe basically a similar thing, and I'm going to define that for you. A quality individualized learning plan is both a plan, a document, and a process. The plan document allows a young person to basically outline their course taking and post-secondary education plans as they relate to career goals that they set for themselves. And also a place to document the college and career readiness skills and accomplishments that they have all throughout secondary school years. As a process, we are talking about engaging students in career development activities that address the 3 skill domains that I mentioned: self-exploration, career and career planning and management, and also aligning that with learning opportunities. And being engaged in this process is really helping students find the relevance of their educational experience, because they're starting to hone in on what motivates them and what they are envisioning for their future, and starting to see the connection of their educational steps to building the future they want for themselves. So while they vary across the country, we're really talking about as a person-centered planning process. It's very self-directed and strengths-based. It typically begins in middle school and carries on from middle school throughout the high school years. And in some places they're starting to expand down to the lower grades as well, into the elementary years. And just clear, it's not the same as education program or IEP specifically for students. But it complements that. Being involved in this planning process and career development process really helps to inform transition planning for students who are in special education. So over the last several years, we've been in the country and how students with disabilities and students without disabilities are engaged, what they are aiming from the experience, what educators and policymakers are finding in terms of the value of this, and whether it's really having an impact on career readiness and college readiness. And what we found through our study was there is a correlation between engaging in a quality individualized learning process and students having higher college and career readiness. Next slide, please. I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware that the Office of Disability Employment Policy created an online map so that you can see whether your state has one of these individualized learning plan policies. The map is a little bit it's a few years old, and we're in the process of updating it. So it's possible that information on your state may not be up to date, but I'd also be happy to answer anyone wants to reach out to me afterwards about the status of ILPs in your state. Next slide, please. So what we've learned from studying career development being facilitated through ILPs and how it's helping to increase career readiness is that there's some practices that we can employ not just in implementing these individualized learning plans, but that we can infuse into our school-based experiences and community-based experiences in some cases for all young people. We want to emphasize that making sure that what's available for all students is inclusive of students with disabilities. And we are very keen to find examples and good policy examples, especially where states are emphasizing and providing guidance to their education systems and others about how to make sure the process is inclusive and accessible to everyone. The practices really are that
Hi everyone. I think we were having a little bit of technical difficulties, and we are lost Mindy momentarily. I think that is one of the joys of technology, so we can have these great conversations together, but that's also one of the pitfalls sometimes when we get together over the web like this. But Mindy should be on shortly again. And I think that she's got some great information for us on career readiness and career development and using ILPs to increase career readiness. And I'm really excited about the National Task Force and the work ahead. This is Elizabeth Whitehouse with CSC, and it was such an honor to staff the task force and Craig and Representative Sly, and to work with Mindy and our other presenter, Kathleen West Evans, and to be able to learn more about this policy area. What we might do, since we're waiting on Mindy to rejoin us, we might let Kathleen go ahead and go through some slides, possibly. That way we can not waste anybody's time together and be able to really look at their information while we're in a holding pattern. Kathleen, would that be okay with you?
Sure. Can you hear me, Elizabeth?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
All right. Sure, you bet. So, Mindy was doing a great job, and she'll rejoin us about planning with young people starting at middle school age. And I can't say enough about that, particularly for students with disabilities, that early perspective of career planning and engaging them in that discussion. My side of the presentation focuses on the work with business and how this translates between the individual and the business, and our role in making a good match between the needs of the employer and the skill sets and the goals of the individual, and supporting that relationship. So if you want to go to the next slide. I work for a nonprofit, national nonprofit called the Council of State Administrators of Vocational Rehab, and basically it's the membership organization of the 80 public vocational rehab, or VR, programs around the country. We're in every state and territories in D.C. We are funded under the U.S. Department of Education, but we collaborate across systems with all of our workforce partners. Our system serves roughly 1 million customers with disabilities a year, and there's a wide range of talent. We serve everywhere from youth that are coming out of the K-12 programs and looking at their first careers, all the way to individuals at the other end of their careers, understanding that the disability happens at any time during the employment life cycle. So we started really looking at how we can better build those career plans that Mindy was referencing and align them with labor market needs. So as we're working with individuals, as you can imagine, we've got individuals who are willing to and want to relocate for that career mobility. We have other individuals who want to stay in their communities. We have individuals who have acquired a disability, and we're looking at retaining them. But the key piece to this was really, how do we work with business, and how do we work with our other large national partners that serve individuals with disabilities? And this includes vocational rehab and employment within the VA, so working with veterans with disabilities. And between our systems, we work with those that acquire disabilities during service and those that acquire them after. And then the other acronym here, AIR, is our American Indian Rehabilitation Program, where we've got 90 programs on or near Native American reservations and Alaskan villages. And we also work with a network of 10,000 community agencies, which is really our vendor network for supporting. So for those of you from a variety of states, our structure is run at the state level to reflect the needs of the state and the resources of the state, but what we're doing is collaborating nationally so we can support each other. Next slide. So how did we start this? We started by asking business. We really looked at how we could do that cross-state collaboration and how we could share lessons learned, and if we're working with a company that has a multi-state footprint, how do we work together? Because businesses were really asking us to do that. So we started shifting our system to what we call dual customer, and again, it's looking at the individual and looking at the business, making the fit, supporting the success of that relationship so that everyone is productive in the workplace. We started by building a national infrastructure. We looked at our partners wherever they exist at the national, state, and local level with the communities, and started building the relationship and strategies with a focus on business services defined by service by the business themselves. So again, because we serve the largest talent pool collectively of individuals with disabilities, we wanted to really leverage the strength of a national team that had the ability to deliver at a state, local level. And what business told us, was important to them, particularly with this population, was building the trust, because we all know that disability is not a dialogue that we've really had in terms of an open dialogue around diversity in the workplace. So building the trust so business can ask questions, being responsive to their needs, letting them define services and the quality of those services and the talent, being consistent and being sustainable. So on the next slide, what you'll see with the National Employment Team, which we call our national team. So again, we have a business specialist aligned with each one of our programs. We're in every state, the territories, and DC. And you'll see a range of services here everywhere from pre-employment, which relates to some of the things that Mindy was talking about, and really taking a look at how we build experience with young people, all the way to, again, the retention supports, working with businesses to look at what's accessible, looking at financial supports and tax incentives that are available to business, and looking at everywhere from how we start to integrate disability into diversity programs, particularly because we've got a lot of federal contractors we're working with. But we've also been working with companies to look at accessible products, how you outreach to this marketplace, and really start to integrate disability as more of the everyday discussion within a business in terms of not only their customer base, but their employee base. Next slide. I really want to share some company examples with you so you can kind of put this in perspective and see how it reaches across industry. Because what we're sitting in right now is a real time of opportunity. We've got an aging workforce. I know we're all in denial, but we do have an aging workforce. So, you know, as people age and want to continue working, we've got to look for ways to retain that talent. We also have a shrinking workforce. So as Mindy was focusing on, building that pipeline of young talent. We've got a federal executive order that focuses on federal agencies and hiring people with disabilities. We've got compliance requirements for federal contractors. So again, we've got a lot of demand for this workforce, and it's really looking at how we employ, build a workforce, and keep people working, again, because disability happens at any point during the employment life cycle. One of the things that Mindy and I discussed that I think is key is when you're looking with a company and looking at this kind of strategy on a national level. I'm going to borrow from one of our businesses that we're working with, Aerojet Rocketdyne. And the CEO of this company said, you know, often we're talking about STEM careers, and there's a lot of focus on STEM, which is a huge need in this country. But they operate the country that launches satellites that manage GPS. So for all of us that get from point A to point B using GPS, this CEO wanted to remind us that as much as we're looking at STEM, those satellites don't launch without a welder. So again, keeping that broad perspective. So I'm going to hit a few examples and then turn this back over to Mindy. I understand she's back with us. So working with our national partners, the U.S. Business Leadership Network, we started working with Starbucks. Starbucks is a company that has an internal employee group, an ERG, an employee resource group. They focused a lot in HR compliance. They are a federal contractor, and they really look across their footprint at how they include people with disabilities and accommodate them, and how they serve this population as customers. We started in their roasting plants in Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Washington by going on a tour, meeting with the team, building a model of training in Nevada, which we call the Inclusion Academy, which was built with VR and a community college partner, as Mindy referenced, with some of those supports for what we call soft skills, but really are the survival skills that all of us need to get and maintain work. And then once that program was up and running, and we've already had several hires within Starbucks, and within other like businesses, we took that same curriculum and moved it to Pennsylvania, where they had another large roasting plant and distribution in York, Pennsylvania. So again, a way of working with a company where you can build a training program and then move that program across their footprint and offer it within their workplace. We're now focusing on retail training with baristas and looking at career paths within this company, but also looking at how we expand to other areas around the country, and even looking at what we call a mobile or pop-up retail training. So that's an exciting partnership with Starbucks. Next slide, please. Another partner in another industry, hospitality, is the Hyatt. In this industry, what we learned in working with the Hyatt is that in order to work in culinary arts, and that's where this partnership started, you have to be 18 years of age. They require a background check. But the surprising thing to us was we had a lot of people in culinary arts training, but there's a lot of people working in this field that have never been to a culinary arts program. And they were having difficulty maintaining their workforce and really developing a flow of people in. Since that wasn't an industry requirement, we were able to really look at some creative ways of working with young people in schools, and including those who received a certificate of completion but not necessarily a high school diploma. And this is what we see with some individuals in special education. But what we've done with them is we've built out a 2-week training program. We have a vendor that delivers it, and we've moved these programs across the country. If you move to the next slide, you'll see our locations here. We've trained 900 people, or actually 900 graduates have obtained employment. The Hyatt hired 250 of those graduates, but we have graduates that have gone to work in hotels, on cruise lines, catering, a gentleman who's starting his own company. And again, it's expanded to several states. We started in Florida, we moved to D.C., Maryland, Virginia, Texas, Colorado, Washington, California, Missouri, Pennsylvania, Hawaii, and we're just launching in Minneapolis. I think the exciting thing about this is one of the young people that came out of a special ed program in Florida is now an executive chef and starting his own business. So you're looking at an individual without a formalized high school diploma that is now earning 6 figures and full benefits. Again, it's thinking with the business about how to build these out. Next slide, please. Again, I just want to represent all of the locations that have been here in the different industries. This is Lowe's. We built a strategic plan with Lowe's. They started in their distribution center, but they built from looking at also their retail sites. We looked at competitive hiring. We did a job analysis and site analysis so we understood their workplace. And then we also built out training programs and started engaging youth while they were still in school to do some mentoring and job shadowing. We also looked at retention. Within the first year of this program, we had 556 people hired at the corporate retail and distribution site. And you can see the range of states that this program impacted, from Alaska to Wyoming and everywhere in between. Next slide. I want to quickly hit on this area also of the industries. With Microsoft, we've been working on a program that focuses on hiring individuals on the autism spectrum. These are very bright individuals. They're college graduates. The key here is really modifying the workplace and working with the company to look at how you minimize visual and auditory distractions. We've got a community partner that stays with candidates through what is basically a 2-week working interview. Microsoft is flying individuals in. We're recruiting from around the country. They pay for travel, housing, per diem. We pick up the cost of all of the supports on the job site. We've already seen 16 individuals hired through this, and these are individuals that are being hired as lab engineers, designers. So it's, again, working with business to build out a model to tap into a talent pool that they may not have had access to, and to tap into opportunities that these individuals may not have had an opportunity to access. Microsoft is ramping that up. Again, one quick example, we had a gentleman who was struggling working in a retail setting, working with customers, and that social aspect can be very difficult. He's now employed as an engineer at $120,000 a year. So again, thinking differently about how we train and employ people. Amazon, we've got a project going there with their sort centers. And if you've watched how Amazon is growing, they're looking at targeting 1 million employees. So we're growing with them and looking at all areas of their operation. We started a project here in Seattle that's now gone to Portland and San Francisco, and we're moving that into the Midwest and Eastern side. On the CVS side, we hear a lot about growth in healthcare. CVS is the largest provider of healthcare in this country. They provide in-home services in addition to their retail sites. And they are also the largest employer of pharmacists and pharmacy techs in this country. So we did a job analysis with them. We've done direct hire, on-site training and retention, and we've developed a pharmacy tech training program with them. So as individuals are coming into the workplace and they've got an interest in some capacity around this profession, working with CVS, they provide the training and the certification. So again, we've got projects like this going in a variety of industries, trucking, you know, healthcare, etc. Next slide. I didn't want to leave out the federal workforce because we've got a federal workforce that in the next 5 years is looking at a 40% turnover due to retirement. So one of the departments we've worked with is the USDA. A lot of people think about this as, you know, primary agriculture, but their largest mission area is the Forest Service. So we've worked with them on their Job Corps. Job Corps allows individuals out of high school to have work experience in the USDA, and they manage their own Job Corps centers. We've done internships with them. We're looking at all their mission-critical areas, training our candidates on how to apply for federal employment, how to develop a federal resume, and then Schedule A hiring, which is a special hiring authority the feds have to bring in talent who happen to be people with disabilities. Next slide, please. This is a glimpse of a new tool. This is a centralized talent pool on a fully accessible platform. This platform was developed through a partnership between us and a disability-owned business out of San Diego. This includes internships. We're currently streaming about 13,000 candidates here, and again, this was a business request. One quick example there. We just received a call 2 weeks ago from Facebook where we've got a project going there, and our California team was able to pull 50 candidates off of this platform and get them to Facebook within a 24-hour turnaround. So it's looking at how we access the talent pool quickly and respond to business needs, as well as working to build training programs to meet their needs. And then the last slide is my contact information. So if you have questions, please let me know. And am I turning this back over to Mindy, or am I turning it over to Craig?
I'm here, so I
Okay.
can keep moving.
All right, thanks, Mindy.
Great, thank you, Kathy. I was going to introduce Kathy by segueing from my discussion around work-based learning, and so if we can skip to slide 9. Where I was at the time, great. I just had a couple more points on slide 9. In terms of career development in school, it's really important for students to have opportunities to engage in this career development in individualized planning on a regular schedule, integrated into their regular school day or week. And the way that some states are doing that is making it a weekly activity in advisory periods, or having it be integrated into a weekly class. But basically the point is to have it be a frequent part of the year-round school schedule, not just a once or twice a year activity. Students also need a caring adult, mentor or advisor, who really gets to know each student and helps them work through the career development process and exploration process, and also helps facilitate those connections to community and work-based learning opportunities. So some schools have really adopted an approach of having the whole school bought into it, and every individual in the school building takes on the role of being a mentor or advisor to some of the students, which helps to make sure every student's connected to someone, given that often the number of actual school counselors to students isn't sufficient for every student to really get that close relationship with someone who can be that mentor. Having students exercise and develop their leadership and self-advocacy skills by presenting about their interests, goals, and plans to their parents and teachers and counselors. So this is sometimes called a student-led parent-teacher conference. Clearly, also for students in special ed, they have IEP, meetings regularly and making sure that those are student-led so that students are really starting to take ownership of defining what they want for their future and how they're going to get there. Using technology, so online career information systems and e-portfolios are becoming very commonplace and provide a rich resource of career information that can be connected to the state's labor market information system. But having those systems have online activities for career exploration and plan development. And by having it online, it can become very easily accessible and portable for students, and also families can get involved by being able to gain access to their students' career information profile. But we also just need to be very vigilant and make sure that these are accessible for all students, including those with disabilities, by making sure that they meet the standards for 508 compliance. And then finally, the most, really my favorite part is engaging employers and community partners. And this is what Kathy was really talking about, is we can't prepare young people for careers and help them develop without the engagement of employers and other community partners who are going to help give young people real-world experiences, getting into real workplaces, whether it's for a short-term work-based learning experience such as a job shadow experience, whether it's having employers come into schools and programs to talk about their careers and have discussions with students or do demonstrations, having work site tours, and eventually having everybody having some sort of paid work experience in the community. So that's what we're really aiming for. Next slide, please. And the reason why we can't do career development without work-based learning is because it's the strongest predictor of later employment. Studies have shown that the post-school employment success of students with disabilities, regardless of their disability label or intensity of special ed services, is really influenced by whether they had paid work during their secondary school years. So we want to make this a high priority for what we're doing to help young people become career ready. And that can take all kinds of forms. There's really a continuum of work-based learning opportunities that we want to build into our schools and our other systems and programs that young people are connected to. And we can't do it without employers as partners. We have to make sure they're a part of the pipeline, not at the end of the pipeline. So I'm really happy that I was able to co-present on this and get to know Kathy as a part of this, because she really brings the business services perspective that we need to couple with our sort of youth development and school services side of the equation. I think at this point, my last slide has a few resources on career development and individualized planning. And if anyone has any questions for me at any point, feel free to reach out to me. I think the last slide might have my contact information. Yeah. And I think I'm passing it over to Craig. Is that correct?
Hi, Mindy. Thank you very much for that transition. My name is Craig Hall from the Massachusetts Developmental Disabilities Council, and I was one of the co-chairs of this Career Readiness Employability Subcommittee and on the National Task Force. And my role this afternoon is to give us a little pause for a moment. We've heard a lot of great information, a lot of great substance from both Kathy and Mindy. But we want to pause for a moment over the next few slides, just talk about where this all came from. So this slide you should be looking at is the National Task Force. And this was put together by the Council of State Governments, so we offer thanks to them, and the National Conference of State Legislatures. Both these organizations represent state governments. The Council of State Governments, or CSG, represents all three branches: executive, legislature, and judicial in state governments. And together they convene this National Task Force on Workforce Development for People with Disabilities. And from there are 10 members. We were then broken into 4 subcommittees, and we have 4 webinars. This is the first, Career Readiness and Employability. What's really important about the National Task Force was that we pulled together experts, stakeholders from across the country, and Representative Jacqueline Sly and myself had fantastic members on our subcommittee. We thank them for all the substance that they offer to us. The National Task Force itself is led by CSU President, Delaware Governor Jack Markell, and the CSG Chair, Nebraska State Senator Bo McCoy. They both were fantastic leaders in championing this process and the importance for people with disabilities and the opportunities that we need for work. So the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the development of our policy framework. So we had several guiding principles. I won't read the principles necessarily, as you can see them up in the webinar, but each of these focused on, the first one focused on 4 goals: equal opportunity, which including treating people with disabilities as individuals, making assessments based on facts, objective evidence, and science, and providing effective and meaningful experiences in most integrated settings as appropriate. We talked about full participation in society, including engagement of people with disabilities in relevant decision-making at the individual and systems level, self-determination, self-advocacy, and informed choice. I want to pause again for just a second and recognize that some of the leaders on our subcommittee, some of the members, were from the National Association for Councils on Developmental Disabilities, which is a national organization which represents developmental disability councils in each of the states and territories across the country. So they were a key stakeholder. The second bullet was really talking about state agencies in government should ensure service delivery is relevant at all ages, is inclusive of all types of disabilities, and maximizes the strengths and abilities of the individual. States should also provide a centralized system of navigation process so that people with disabilities and their families have a place to ask questions and get answers about rights, responsibilities, services, and supports. The third bullet talks about individuals with disabilities alongside their families, their advocates, and their champions from agencies, education, business, which is a key focus, and communities should be engaged throughout the policy-making process at all levels. And this includes increasing the actual participation of people with disabilities at the highest levels of state government. And the last bullet on this slide talks about, second to last bullet in this slide, talks about the strong rationale for including people with disabilities in public policy efforts, targeting other underrepresented groups like veterans, women, and minorities. And again, the final bullet talks about state disability employment initiatives. These have the best chance of success where employers are motivated to hire people with disabilities, not because they have to or because it's the right thing to do, but because they recognize that disability inclusion helps boost the bottom line to increase innovation, creativity, and productivity. My next slide, my last slide, again talks about the work of our subcommittee. So our subcommittee focused on or centered on K through 12 and young adult education and transition to employment. We explored such issues as the person-centered education and career readiness planning. We talked about non-traditional educational opportunities. We talked about everything from online classes to different types of certificate programs. We talked about work, community-based learning, and the collaboration with educational institutions, which include the vocational rehabilitation that Kathy talked about, the workforce development system and business community that Mindy talked about. And all in all, the subcommittees concentrated on the individuals entering the labor market, defining employability as the capacity to get and keep satisfactory work. That concludes my part. I get to hand this off or hand this back to Representative Jacqueline Sly. She's going to talk a little bit about where we go with state officials and then laying some groundwork and what's happening next. So thank you.
Thank you, Craig, and also Kathy and Mindy. They have really laid out the landscape and where we're going, and as we're doing this, I'm in the House of Representatives, so as we look at state officials or as a state, what do we do? And that was part of what our goal was, is to try to look at what can states do to address people with disabilities and their employment. So if we look at this slide, approaching disability employment policy as a state official, we know that when individuals with disabilities are part of the workforce, that everyone benefits from that. It also helps them gain independence, and we also reach out to workers that maybe wouldn't have jobs otherwise, and they add a lot of additional people that will build that strong workforce that we need. So what they found, states that have really taken this on, they find that this actually increases their economic success. So let's look at the next slide and see what we can do. As we look at laying the groundwork, there's really 4 areas. States as model employers. We have some states that have done just a really nice job with it, and building capacity, because it does take sometimes within the state some extra things that they have to do to make it accessible for people with disabilities, and then looking and focusing on disability awareness. We want to look both externally and internally for that, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then to use our resources and services. Next slide. So let's take a look at states as model employers. What it does when we have states that are the models that other private businesses can look at, it shows that the state is committed to that. And what they can do is they create that infrastructure to maximize that likelihood that the issues that affect people with disabilities are addressed by the state agencies too. And then that also looks at hiring systems that they have so that we can include individuals with disabilities in those hiring practices. We also look at ways that we can know that people that are employed will also be part of the advancement and retention. So if we implement these stay-at-work policies and return to work policies, that benefits everybody. Then the next part, we need to provide training for state personnel, people that will be part of that whole process of employing individuals with disabilities. Let's look at the next slide. We build capacity. Next slide. There we go. We build capacity for for disability inclusion efforts. Well, sometimes we have to have technical assistance so that we can help those businesses that are interested in employing them. The state can also use either existing databases or develop databases so that people with disabilities, it's helpful for them as they're looking for employment. We also want to expand diversity and inclusion. We want to look at ways that we include maybe an analysis or goals that we know that are going to apply not only to those that are typically included, but to include those with disabilities. So some states have convened a task force. My particular state did that. I'm from South Dakota, and we've had great results from that as we brought people together to talk about what are the needs of individual states, and then put in place those strategies that help your state to move forward with that. You also want to look at ways to engage business champions, and Mindy and Kathy talked a little bit about that too, of how we have to partner, not just the state, but we have to move much beyond that. The bottom 2 bullets, looking at tax incentives and tax credits. Oftentimes those would involve legislation that we would have to put in place as a state in order to do some of those things. Let's look at the next one. Next slide. Laying focus on disability awareness. We talked a lot about within our task force committee of how we need to really be aware of externally, outside of say, your organization or outside with the public, those types of, how do you, we talked about disability etiquette, okay? Are there things that you need to be aware of that maybe people that are working within those systems, that it would be helpful for them to have some training or professional development that would help them? And so it would happen both looking at external focus and then internal focus within the organization too, and building that awareness, and everyone benefits from that. Next page, or next slide. So we want to optimize our resources. We need to look within. Sometimes we live in silos and we have all the different departments and agencies, and we all kind of stick within our own little comfort level, and we need to look at how do you coordinate those systems to partner with all the different people that are affected by it. And so then you have to look at interlevel collaboration. You have to bring people in from outside, and then look at supporting in other ways, such as job coach programs, looking at accessibility, centralized systems, and then how do you report your successes? How do you move forward so that you know if there are things that need to be changed or be improved? We also talked about having accessible one-call, one-click system so that you don't have to do that little chase-around thing that you often do when you're trying to get assistance or support for the people with disabilities. Have a centralized system that makes it easy to access the information and resources that you need. Next slide. So we are looking at preparing for work. Here again, we have to prepare our young people, and both the conversations earlier today have really talked about that. We have to look at education and career readiness, facilitate that skill development and job exploration, and family engagement. We've covered a lot of this. We'll go to the next slide, and I'm going to go quite quickly because we're approaching 1 o'clock and we are respectful of everybody's time. We need to look at having those plans that were talked about, include that youth in decision making, and then strengthen that capacity to design and implement those programs and strategies. Next slide. We want to facilitate skill development and job exploration. We had some great examples today of looking at work-based learning and working collaboratively with public-private entities, state and local, looking at the Voc Rehab. We all need to be attacking this together and finding solutions rather than thinking that we cannot work together in order to find the solutions we need. Next slide. We haven't talked very much about family engagement, and we spent a lot of time within the task force of talking about, okay, how do we reach out to the families to engage them and encourage them? A lot of times they're having a lot of challenges within their own family, and we can reach out to them to give them that support that they need, and also bring them in to provide them with appropriate knowledge so that we can support our youth with disabilities. Many families have a lot of experience that they could serve as advisors, that they can bring on board, that we can do that through our workforce development, or we're designing career programs and different strategies. And then we also want to engage the families in the planning. Just like we do, we want to engage the individual, but also the families. Well, this was a whirlwind, wasn't it? Next slide, please. We are, our next steps, we are going to have some other eCademy webcasts, and you can see them on the screen there. And we're going to be November 15th. The 22nd and the 29th, and they will explore the other subcommittees that we had within this. Now, I'm not sure here if we have additional comments or questions. Elizabeth, do you want to help me with that?
Yes, ma'am. And I want to thank you all so much for being on the panel and talking about next steps. We're so excited to roll out this national framework that everybody that's on this call as your panelists have put lots of weekend hours and lots of research and guidance on. We'll roll that out at CSG's annual meeting on December 8th with a full-day policy academy to really take a deeper dive into a lot of the issues we've discussed today and provide an opportunity for discussion and to learn about what's going on in the state and what are some things that we see on the horizon. Going over, looking at some of the questions that you guys have sent to me, Mindy, I had one for you on if you have any best practices for family engagement. What are some states that are doing a great job in that area?
Hi everybody, this is Mindy. I'm so sorry, I don't have specific states at the top of my head. It's definitely a practice that we've seen in several states, and I want to say Minnesota is one of those, Colorado is one of those, and this is where Washington State comes to mind as well, where they're really engaging the family in that individualized learning plan process by having families invited to the student-teacher conferences, encouraging families to do things at home that will help further the career exploration process, and also inviting families in some cases to have access to those online career information systems. I know Kentucky is one that did that. So those are just some of the examples that quickly come to my mind. I'd be happy to gather some further information to share that we can make available.
No, Mindy, thank you so much. And I know that we had another question on if the materials from today will be available. All of the webinars will be posted, the whole series, throughout November on disability employment policy. All of our webinars will be posted on the Knowledge Center shortly after each one. That way there'll be a continuing resource. So if anyone wants to go to www.csg.org, you can easily find our eCademy webcast series that we've been doing today, and we'll continue on November 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. We will tackle the other content and policy areas that the task force reviewed and researched, and we're so excited about that. And I'd love to see many of you on December 8th when we roll out our national report that this provides a great preview for. Thank you so much to our panelists for providing your expertise and so many great examples on what's going on in the states and across the country today.